What's up, everybody? Welcome to Puzzle Huddle with Experts. We have another fantastic interview. If you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can see all of our future videos. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming an exciting person that I met on social media through Instagram. Miss Blossom Williams is a homeschool educator, a mother of three, and she had made a critical decision to support the education for her children at home. And I'm very excited to learn about her personal experience. So thank you so much for joining me today, Miss Williams.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew. I really appreciate it.
If you could, before we get into the hard-hitting questions, if you could tell me about your childhood, what were some of your favorite toys as a child?
Yeah, so I'll separate this into two areas. When I'm thinking about outdoors, my favorite childhood toy was the Skip It. And I love the Skip It, okay? And I'm trying to find Skip Its for my children, but I loved it. I love math and numbers, so it was something really affirming and fun to be able to measure what I'm doing, but to be physical and to be outdoors. So the Skip It was my outdoor toy, and I just loved and adored it.
They
And
had
then
a
when
heck of that commercial, Skip It, Skip, yeah.
Yes, I love it. I'm trying to find, they have different remakes of it, but they're not the same. So I'm hoping to find an old school Skip It that I could purchase for home. So I love it. And then when I think about indoors, I would say clay. I loved clay. I loved Play-Doh, being able to mold something out of nothing. And I think they both were just therapeutic for me in different ways. So I loved clay. I could play with it all day. If there was clay at school, I wanted it. And so those were, I probably would say, two of my favorite childhood toys.
What's cool, the way that you're saying that some of the best toys, they're to some degree timeless. They
Yes.
work for us as kids, and they would still work for kids today.
Yes.
How
Yep.
cool is that?
They're timeless, and I think they're simple. There's no distractions, and you are the one that gets to create whatever you want it to be. So for Skip It, you can stand in place, you can go up and down the street.
Very
For clay,
portable. It does not
yes,
take up a lot of
portable.
space.
Yes. So I love those two for me. That's
All
really
right. And then maybe one more thing from your childhood. Do you recall what some of your favorite childhood books were?
So unfortunately, I cannot. And that for me is very humbling to say. I cannot think of like a specific childhood books. And I think I didn't really like reading growing up. And I think that is why I do push literacy so much with my children and and I think part of it was just, I didn't really have someone to bring it to life and to give me engaging texts around my interests. I danced and I cheered. And so someone maybe would have gave books around that or my creative interest, but I didn't have that. And I think because of that, that's what helps me to make sure I'm so intentional with my children. But I cannot think of like a book that really connected with me when I was younger, unfortunately. But now up until I think maybe high school is when I really had a moment where I engaged with a book through my teacher. But as a young child, no, I cannot think of a favorite book.
Well, you brought up another thing that I want to try to dig into. So if you cheered and danced as a child, what are some other things about your childhood that you're trying to replicate for your children in their growing up experience?
Yeah, so if I had to choose a few things, I think it would have been travel, specifically road trips. And then something that is just personal to me is a fort. So travel, we were a family of 6. My parents are from Oklahoma. So every summer we traveled from Detroit to Oklahoma, and just being in the car with family, the anticipation of the road trip and where we would stop, knew what our end result was, but my mom prepping the food, being with family, stopping along the way and just going slow. And I would always get a composition journal where I could journal about my summer. And that to me was just priceless and the most meaningful things and parts and memories of my childhood. So that was something I wanted to make sure we did road trips with my children so we can stop and go slow and just learn. And if we want some impromptu and take the scenic route, we could do that. And so that was something I really wanted to do with our children.
And likely this was probably traveling with a paper map.
Yes. Old school maps. And then, as we got fancy, we had the map quest. But my mom and my siblings, they were good. I was all the way in the back because we were in a van, and I would be all the way in the back with my blankets and my journal and just enjoying the ride. So
now you said earlier, did you say you were a family of 6 or that there were 6 kids?
6 kids. So my mom, my mom was a single parent. And so she raised 6 kids. And so between my oldest sibling and me, there's a gap of 20 years. So I'm the baby of the 6. And so my mom is my shero, and she was just amazing to make sure that we just had experiences and that everything was intentional and filled with love and fun. And so I just wanted to extend that and give that to my children. And then I said forts because I grew up in very humble beginnings, and the fort was just this enchanted place for me. I would take all the chairs and tables and blankets, and my mom would let me, and I would just be in the fort. And my kids now love forts on those rainy days where you're like, let's get creative. The forts are timeless, they're free. And it's just something for the imagination that takes place. And it feels almost like a safe haven too, where you create the world that you want. So
yeah, with enough blankets and chairs and pillows, things you already have in your home, you don't have to download anything.
The couch cushions, if you have a spare sleeping bag or air mattress, yes. We go a little intense with our forts, but they are lovely and they stay up for the greater part of the day, and the kids love them. So,
oh, I'm probably making a fort today.
Yes, you should. You should.
We're going to get home and do that. Oh, that's an awesome activity. Thanks for reminding me about that, even from my childhood.
Yeah.
Now, take me into your decision to homeschool your kids. Was that something that was always part of your plan, or what was the transition or the inflection point that made that a compelling option for you?
Yeah, no, that was never a part of the plan. Again, I worked, part of my background is I worked with children prior to coming home for over a decade. And so I thought I would just always be in that realm of working with children in an educational capacity. But when we moved from Michigan to Illinois, we joined a church, and it was there that I had my first interaction and engagement with stay-at-home moms and then moms that were homeschooling. And so, you know, in a small church plant, we're living a lot of life to life together. And I just remember them standing out to me, one, because of the dynamic of their family and how their family just had this really close-knit nature. And then on top of that, the kids were so mannerable and well-behaved, and they had this intellectual curiosity that was just like, what is happening with this? Like, what is this? And I just remember being so perplexed but engaged, because there's a stigma on homeschool families, and they were breaking all of these stigmas on homeschool families. And then on top of that, I saw women who looked like me doing it. And I had never been engaged or been in the space of Black women or women of color homeschooling and being at home. And so I think that's where the seeds were sown. And I mean, they didn't bud until later on, you know, 5 to 7 years later. But I think that's where it started, where it made me challenge how I view education and where education can take place, and also who are the best educators for our children. So.
Yeah, thank goodness for social media, because I wouldn't have a window into homeschooling other than social media. And what I've been exposed to, in many cases, it's like fantastic stuff. Like this is not stuff in the margins. Like this is.
And it connects us, because I found you through Chanel for Two Lights Academy. And so she was a great resource for me through. I'm not a big social media person. I'm more behind the scenes, and I kind of thrive like that. But when I started homeschooling, I had my church family community, but then I wanted to, you know, see some other people who looked like me who were doing it and doing it well. And she was a great resource for me to really expand what I could do, to try some new things. And that's how I found Puzzle Huddle too. She had the puzzle on her page. So that was a great connection too.
How did you learn the skills to be an effective homeschooler and, you know, educate your children academically at the levels that they needed support? How did you learn how to do that?
Yeah, so my background, I worked with a few different educational based programs. So I worked with the government TRIO program, Upper Bound, that works with urban setting, low income students from minority backgrounds. And then I also worked at Boys and Girls Club, where I did a community school model. So out of that, I was the manager of their academic after school enrichment program, where we would build curriculum, implement curriculum, tweak curriculum. And we also oversaw the homeschool model of just meeting the needs of the community through that. And I ended my career as a school director for a college access program, working with high schoolers, first-gen students of color from low-income backgrounds, to get them into private liberal arts colleges. And so all of these experiences, I simply pulled from the best practices of leading, developing, implementing curriculum, being flexible, tweaking it, stopping curriculum when it's not working, and going outside and doing nature study or taking school outside and just learning to move and ebb and flow. And so that training really helped me, even some training in Montessori background, to observe kids, to see where they thrive, how we can meet their needs, where we can adjust. And all of that really propelled me and made me confident to feel like I can do this. I've done this for kids for over a decade. I could transition that into the home just because I really wanted to see my kids thrive in a meaningful way.
Yeah, my next question. This question is ringing in my head, and I'm hesitant to ask it, but it's the most compelling question to me, or it is a very compelling question.
Okay.
As a lot of people decide to pursue homeschooling or not, some of it is a financial decision in terms of employment and income for their household. How did
Yes.
you and your husband kind of have that conversation and make a decision about prioritizing your presence at home versus earning a living, which is what you were doing before?
Yes. And I think we often credit as just the providence of God and his timing, because when I had my first, I have three children. When I had my first, I wanted to come home then, but financially we just weren't in the place to make that adjustment. And so then as we moved, it was when I had my second was 1 years old, and my mom moved, she retired and moved to Illinois to help take care of our children because we were both in high management positions. My husband is a physical therapist, and so he's now a regional director, and I was a director for a college access program. And so at that time, when she moved and relocated, we had to make the hard decision, because being in management like that, there would be times where she would be at our house for 72 hours and have to stay the night because we're both working, doing things, and that wasn't sustainable. And so honestly, for us, we had to make the sacrifice and make this transition to come home because we wanted her to be a grandmother, but also the home was just not in order as we liked. And so we had to make the adjustment. We took a step by faith, cut some things, altered the lifestyle,
Yeah.
and said we're going into this and we're going to pray that it's going to work out. And it has. It is a sacrifice. I finally have found my dream job, and stepping down for that, I wanted to, but at the same time, a one income family, it can be done, but your lifestyle changes drastically, from what you do, where you go, the incentives and the travel. But we just made a conscious decision to make sacrifices in these other areas to bring me home. And God has just really been faithful to us in that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question for every family to answer for themselves.
Yes.
Sometimes I wonder in my own skin what we're optimizing for in our household. I get the appeal of optimizing for income. It's let's dial everything into a place where the parents can make as much money as they can make.
Yes.
But that is not necessarily the only thing you can optimize for, nor the right thing. It's just
Yes.
a choice. But you could optimize for the priority is our children's education. Will change everything to support that,
Yeah.
or lots of things that you could put as the thing.
Yeah. And I think it's about capacity. I think knowing yourself and knowing what you can handle. So for me, there are some people who may homeschool and do some things on the side. And now you have means like social media where you can monetize and things like that. So I think it's about prioritizing and knowing your capacity. And like for me, I knew I can multitask, but I'm not the most efficient and effective when I'm spread thin. I can give the best of me and I thrive when I can tunnel in and focus. So for me, I knew if I was going to homeschool, that was all I was going to be able to do. And that was how I was going to be able to do it to a level of excellence that, I could sleep at night and know that my kids are getting the best of me. So I think it's about the transition can be made and a sacrifice can be made. And now you have things like Amazon Flex and DoorDash and all of these means where you can still and social media where you can still generate income on the side. You just have to be creative in how you do it. You have Etsy and all, there's so much that you can do now that you couldn't do back in the day, where you can still be at home and be present, but it is a sacrifice. I mean, it's a sacrifice of time, talents, but it's a temporary sacrifice that, it produces effectual and lifelong goods in our children, in our youth that's going to impact it. So for me, the sacrifice is definitely worth it. For my husband, it's worth it. And so we have been very grateful for the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. How do you get each? I struggle with this when all of my children are at home and trying to help each of them at the level of academic capability that they need help. When all three of them are present, it's hard because they all
Yeah.
need something different. You know, if I'm
Yeah.
just dealing with one child, I can really dial into their unique development needs, but three at the same time is
No, I
it's hard.
understand.
How do you get each child what they need throughout the day while all three of them are present?
Yeah, and so we do community style learning for me, which is just better. If I think when I first started out, I have one here, and that it just didn't, it felt like, again, I'm doing like that brick and mortar concept of schooling. And so we do a community style. And so I start from youngest to oldest. And so I prioritize that. I know my little man, his curriculum is not going to be as robust as his sisters. And so we start with him, and then the older two are doing independent work. So my second will be doing penmanship because she can read, she can work on that independently. She can do her independent reading, where my oldest is self-sufficient. And so she navigates her curriculum. So I start with the youngest to get him set and to go through his work. And then he's entering into his independent play with whatever manipulatives he has before him. Then I transition to the second daughter to, do the tougher work where she may need some more expounding and explaining. And then I end with my oldest daughter. And they know if you have a question while I'm working with one, if I can pop over to address it, I can come back. But we really set this tone of being respectful in our spaces, waiting until I can get to you to help you. And then also sometimes, I levy my, I use leverage for my oldest child to say, hey, she's working on, her multiples of 10. I know you know that really well. Affirming her and say, can you work with her for a second while I'm still finishing with Lejay? And so you just optimize what you have, and it really works. And two, I think I'm very structured. And so they know when we're in this space, we're respectful. Because two, you never know what life may bring, and they may have to transition one day into school. We know they'll transition to college. So I do take some of the best practices from a traditional school because I want them to be able to transfer wherever they go in any season of life. But I think just the schedule, they know I'm going to start with him. I'm going to move to you. I'm going to move to you. But if there's an emergency or new content that you need to learn, then we put that on the back end until mommy can get to you.
How do you separate home time, like just at home, relaxing, like just regular family time, from school time where it's structured curriculum and learning, or does it just all kind of wash into each other?
Yeah, I think that was my greatest fear of homeschooling, is that will our home feel like a home because we're homeschooling, or will it, just take away that natural flow and organic flow? But it does not. I think they know that we set this time, this place, and we have a designated location, and this is where school takes place. And I think the best advice that I received to make sure to separate it from my mentor in Illinois was that she said, when they're done with school, they're done. No backseas, no going back. So like typically you'll set, depending on the age, 2 to 3 hours for us for homeschooling. And if they get done in an hour, they're done. My tendency as an academic is to be like, okay, well, let's throw some more in there. Let's get some more manipulatives.
Yeah.
But I never forget that advice, that if they finish the work that was assigned for that day and they're done, they're done. And I think having these boundaries around school to know we work hard, but we play hard. But when school is done, school is done. And then that's your time. You've earned your time to be in your space. We put our manipulatives up, and then we go about the day and they go on to their extracurricular activities. And so that has really helped us. They know school is in the first part of the morning, and then after school is done, we're done. And that has worked well for us.
All right. And parents, and specifically moms, need a break from the demands of motherhood, being a wife, and then also, running. How do you ensure that you get a break mentally and emotionally, just to detach so you can recharge and plug back in with the right amount of energy?
Yeah, so I have not always been the best at this, just because I just love serving my family and extensions of friends in my family. But I think actually through the pandemic and through some of the trauma and through loss of loved ones and different things like that, and just life, I found myself having that pivotal moment of just feeling like I'm getting ready. I'm at my breaking point. And so I sought out therapy, a counselor. I just felt a strong pull to do it. And I now use counseling and therapy more as proactive than reactive. I don't wait until there's trauma or a breakdown. I have monthly check-ins or bi-monthly check-ins just so that I can have a space that's just, I can be unapologetic. I don't have to buffer. There's a neutral party, and I can just say, this is how I'm feeling, and have someone sew into me, but also give me modalities and best practices on how to be healthy. Because if I'm not the healthiest version for me, then I can't be healthy for my family and for those around me. So therapy, honestly, has been my primary focus right now, to make sure that I'm giving that self-giving, that love, and that time to really make sure that my mind, my body, and my soul are in a posture to where I can serve others.
Yeah, can you describe your homeschooling space? A lot of us were scrambling during the pandemic to create homeschooling spaces inside of our homes, and
Yes.
that because we don't know any differently. To us that meant create a classroom in your home.
Yes.
But I'm not sure because I didn't read about it. I just said let's make a room look like a
Yeah.
classroom. What does your home look like? Is there a space in your home that looks like a classroom, or what is the homeschooling? How do you design your homeschooling space?
So for us, we use our dining room table. So we have like a breakfast table in our kitchen, where you have an extended kitchen. So we have a breakfast table, and that's primarily where we eat every day. But then we have a formal dining room table that we use more when we're trying to be a little fancy or have,
Yeah,
extended guests at our home. And so we use that space. And it's like a dual space for dining, but then each kid has a cart with their curriculum, and it's tucked away in the corner. We have an easel, and then the manipulatives are up under the table. And that's how we got creative. So, and it's very nice and neat. And then I have like artwork that my daughter created. That's the focal point on one of the walls in the dining room.
yeah.
And then I have some quotes from like Charlotte Mason that just encourage them and remind them. So we've done it in a very way where it still looks livable
Mhm.
as a dining room, but that's their space, and that's where we do it. And we tuck it away, and then they're on carts. So if we need to move it to have more space, we can. But we just use what we had. And because sometimes you don't always have a separate room. And in our home, we have an unfinished basement, that we plan to finish. That may, then be converted, but for the most part, we use what we have, and we keep it simple. And as long as they have all that they need, too, we try to get out the house a lot as well. And so we
Yeah.
just use what you have. And so I think sometimes we feel like, oh, we need to have this elaborate, and some people can't afford to do that. But for us, we have the basics, we make it fun, and the kids are thriving in it.
Yeah, how do you pregame for the learning day? How much, study do you have to do as the educator to get ahead of the curriculum so you know what's next? Like, do you have to are you up late at night game planning the next day, or is there like a map that you can just kind of do it
Yeah.
organically and you open some handbook?
Yeah, so early on, there was a lot of late nights just because of my personality, and I wanted to make sure that I did it well. But I think once you hit the sweet spot and you enter into year 2 and year 3, you've kind of find the groove. And I purposely selected curriculum that did not require a lot of before prep, because I have 3 different children. And then on top of that, I do community school learning. So for their math and for their language arts and their reading, that has to be grade level because they're just on different grade levels. But for our science, our social studies, our history, we do group learning. And so I purposely chose curriculum that spans from K through 8, because then we all can sit at the table. I can, water it down for my youngest to understand, but then I can extend it and make it more complex for my oldest. And so that was like our rhythm and our sweet spot to find that place to where I can be efficient and it's not stressful, and I can just open the book. And sometimes I do just skim what they're doing, whether it's the night before or while they're eating breakfast. I'll just go in to make sure that there's no new content. But I purposely choose curriculum that has very minimum prep time in it, because that's just better just for our life and homeschooling 3 little people.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few times this concept of community-based learning. Just
Yeah.
in case someone doesn't understand what that framework is, what are you referring to when you say community-based learning?
And so what that means is, like, typically when you think of curriculum or when you think of your traditional school, everybody does curriculum based on their learning level. So kindergarten, first, second, third, and that's what you do. You do curriculum that's been created for that particular learning level. With community school based learning, there's curriculum that has a range. And so it's been created to be able to be taught and understood from the lowest levels of kindergarten, pre-K, all the way to the highest level of 8th grade.
Okay.
And so for me, I found it was a challenge to really effectively teach all of these different grade levels efficiently. And so I knew, so in talking to other homeschool moms, they were like, hey, for your math and your reading, that needs to be grade level. You want to make sure that they're growing with their age, and that, that they're growing at a certain level and above that. But for science, for science and for social studies and history, these are concepts that are not really indicative on age. And so then when I did that, that changed the game for homeschooling. It just, so like for this summer, we're on summer break, but I homeschool all year round. And so our new school year will kick off after July 4th. And then we're going to start our science for the summer is going to be the planets. Now, planets, that can be taught from my little man who's 4 all the way to my daughter who's 9. And they're all going to be able to engage and understand because it's a community study that will allow for you to, like I said, make it a little more simple or make it a little more complex.
Which topic is your favorite area? Like which subject is like your jam? Like when you get a chance, when you're in this space, like I'm about to kill this. Like my kid's going to get we're in our sweet spot. What subject is that for you?
It's math. I love math. I actually in college, I started my undergrad in secondary education for mathematics, then I transitioned to political science. But math, I have always loved numbers. My mind is just wired to compute. My children are always like, you really love this, or how did you use those numbers in your mind? But it's always been my favorite subject. So I'm always like, I want somebody to love math like me. But I say my strong suits are math and your history, social studies. And then my husband is a physical therapist. So science and language arts are his jam. And so it's nice to like, when I feel a little like, I don't know if I'm really hitting this correctly, then I can pass the book to him. And then he comes in with the anatomy and doing all that. He just makes it so fun and they get it. And I'm like, hey, that's okay. That's why this is a partnership. So, but math is my jam. I love, love, love math games, everything. It just makes me really happy.
What time is even though your husband may work out of the home in his professional career, in terms of that partnership, there's certainly lots of opportunity for him to engage this homeschooling experience. How does he play a role in their academic development, even though he's outside of the home? And what is he able to contribute?
Yeah, and so I consult him a lot just because we know our children very well. So like even in the homeschool selection, when I'm trying to choose what do I think this child needs, because homeschool is not a one size fits all model. So what math may work with my kindergartner may not have worked with my soon to be 4th grader. And so asking him like, this is the method, this is the learning style. Do you think this will connect? And so just consulting him on that piece, but I think bringing his background in. So there were some times in his schedule where he would have a later start time. And so he was teaching the kids an anatomy course, and he took it to the next level, just using his profession, making it so fun and engaging, teaching them about the body, the bones, teaching the bone songs, and all of these different things. And I think just seeing him thrive and using his skill set to impart their knowledge. And now, he's in a different position that doesn't allow that type of flexibility, but the kids are like, we want you back to teach, and so he finds pockets of time to connect with them and teach on something that he's passionate about. And the kids have really enjoyed that time with daddy. So
yeah, I'm sure that balance helps. It always helps when somebody put instruction and somebody can bring in the fun, and then you can rotate, and then now it's fun, and then it's everybody.
Yeah, because mommy is not always the fun one. I am more of the let's get it done. And then after we're done with our work, we have fun. I'll find ways to engage it. But yeah, they said mommy is a hard teacher, but I told them they will appreciate it later.
Yeah, I'm sure. And when they look back, it will be, I'm certain of fond memories.
Yes.
You mentioned early in our conversation that you were observed some other families and you really appreciated the politeness, the development, what have you seen from your children? What have there been any highlights that were really affirming for you, and you just kind of thought, wow, we made the right decision. Look what just happened, and this is likely a product of the decision we made?
Yeah, I think, even just seeing the growth of when our family has gotten really close through being home. And obviously there's times where, you're just like, I need individual space, but our family unit is so connected, so close. And I think I never imagined that was going to happen, but in such a healthy way. And so a story just with my oldest, she really struggled with math. And so we went through a journey of trying some different math curriculums, and, it was a struggle and it was difficult, and I questioned, like, are we making the right decision? Because there was tears almost every day to do math because she just did not like it. So then we fast forward and now we're going into year 4 and now she's doing her math. We always have math first. I have each child choose their most difficult subject first because you're fresh in the morning and you need to do that, get it out the way. But now she wants to do the math. Now she's excited and she's excelling. And I think those moments of teaching them to persevere and to endure and to be steadfast, and that if you keep working at it, it will get better once we get over the hump of some of the mental blocks and things like that. So I think that was one thing of that aha moment. But I think also during the pandemic and during simultaneously a time of so much civil unrest in our world, that affirmed me that we were making the right decision, to where we could be the ones to affirm them and their identity in Christ, to affirm them in their value as beautiful brown people, to affirm them that no, there is so many things that are waiting for you, so many opportunities. And then for them to have my oldest come and say, I'm so grateful, as she's getting wind, of things that are happening in our world, to say, Mom, I'm so happy that you're homeschooling me, and I'm happy that I'm homeschooled. Those moments are like, you get to see little fruits from what you're sowing, to where they're clicking with the curriculum. They see that they have the opportunities are limitless for what they can do. And we can do homeschool at the park. We can do it anywhere that it's mobile, and just having them to appreciate just the privilege and blessing it is to be in this space. So.
Yeah, and if you were able to bring the math brain out of your daughter, I'm sure that was very satisfying for you to
Oh,
have.
yes, it was. It was. She's still like, she's still kind of like, yeah, I still like this over here. But I'm like, you found joy when you were doing that, those math problems. So that to me, I won. And I think every homeschool mom loves those moments where something they hated, now they're loving. And so that was a great moment for me.
Yeah, maybe final question for those of us that aren't homeschooling, but we really desire to support the academic development of our children. What are some resources that you found to be very helpful, and maybe we aren't able to embrace the resource as a full-time educator for our children, even in the moments that we have? What are some resources that you have found to be particularly useful in terms of textbooks, curriculum, podcasts, videos, the whole books, all the things in the world that you can grasp? What might you point some parents to?
So I would think I think online and social media, like finding people on social media who you feel like they're doing it and they're doing it well with excellence. They're strategic. Like I bring up Chanel, but like it was so helpful for me as a new homeschooling mom. And even when I wasn't homeschooling, to have her page where she's going through curriculum or sharing best practices, or saying, hey, I found this book. It speaks on this and this, or I'm doing this curriculum. It's really helping to evolve his learning and his her sprout, his learning and what he's doing. And so I think using social media and then going online where there's different curriculum, but now a lot of curriculums are offering sample pages, and really good sample pages. So it's not like before where you just have to buy if it didn't connect, but now you can download, anywhere from 1 to 20 sample pages as resources to just really make sure that this connects, and supplements. So I think for me, connecting with other moms in the homeschool community. We're also a part of a co-op. So then just hearing best practices of what they're using and what's worked. Attending a homeschool conference, even if you don't homeschool, because there's so many professionals that are there who are elite in their fields, who develop curriculum, who are a part of developing standardized testing. So even if you don't homeschool, you can still go, because there's just so much out there to help you even have supplemental resources for your students, even if they're struggling and they're in the traditional school system. So,
all right, new final question.
Yeah.
How do you keep your home environment, how do you prevent it from being overwhelmed with school supplies and materials? How do you keep the place, efficiently clean and streamlined, so that it's not, the whole house doesn't turn into a school space?
Yeah. And so, like I said, we have a designated area. They each have individual carts, and then they know that those carts are off limit. That is school stuff. So they have separate arts and crafts and things. And if they need to borrow something, they can, but we keep it on the carts, and the carts keep it condensed and keep it organized. And then I have totes. So like every year, whatever curriculum has been completed, I put it in the plastic totes with the top, and then we transition that down. And so under our dining room table are the manipulatives that we're using, and they're very organized. And so it's just keeping it minimal. And then if you have storage, keeping any other things in storage so that it doesn't overflow. And for us, using a dual space, you can still live. And so that has worked well. We keep everything on the carts, and then things in totes. And then if I need to go retrieve something, I just go downstairs or, wherever the tote is stored and get it from there. But
Yeah.
that helps.
Maybe I'm just trying to reconcile I don't even know if it's a real problem. Maybe it's an emotional problem where in my perception, my kids have things everywhere. And I'm always struggling with everywhere cannot be kid space. And I'm not even sure if that's literally true, but in my mind's, my heart's mind, like I feel like they have stuff everywhere.
Yeah. And I'm very organized, A-type like that. And I think, again, some advice that a homeschool mom gave me, she's like, they're kids and they're in a livable space. So you clean it up after them every 5 seconds is only going to create a frustration for you, and it limits their play and their opportunity. So she was like, during this time, just let it be. And then after, the midday, we clean up, and then, there's going to be a round 2, and then you clean up then, but then having storage places. So I went over and above for my son and he's 4, and in his toy box, I put these individual toy boxes. I organized them by cars, by stuffies, and I mean, he went in there and just devoured that. And I couldn't even get frustrated. I was like, he's 4. So why am I even, it's just full. You just toss them all in there, but it's still out of the way. And so having spaces to where they can just throw them in there. Now, like the manipulatives are a little bit different. For the learning manipulatives, those need to be structured, but for the individual play places, it's like, I have greater expectations for my older daughter, but for the younger little people, it's just, I have different storage nooks where they can just put things in drawers so they're away. They know where they are, but they're not out in the community space, cluttering up the space, I would say.
All right. Well, this has been wonderful. I'm approaching these with 2 goals. One, to help myself, but also to help pull some information that may be helpful to a wider audience. So you've certainly given me some things that are going to help me. And maybe in that are some nuggets that other families and moms and dads can pull from to put some more structure and to enhance what they're probably already doing at home.
Yes.
So thank you so much for your time. If you watched the video this far, please to the end, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to our channel. And we hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.